All right, I'm going to start with just a little advertisement. We saw our new members, but one of the great things about how these new members get here is that we have a membership team, and they always need new people to be able to help with them, be able to discover and shepherd folks as they move into this church. And so, if you'd like to be part of that team, talk to Monty. She's part of that. She's part of that team, and we'd love to have you there. Ann, are you there?
Hi.
And there she is. That's our chair of our membership team, and so if you would like to be part of that team, go and see her. So thank you, Ann, to your whole committee. Thank you. At 13 years old, the brilliant, wise age of 13, I should say, I discovered one of the great anti-establishment anthems. It went kind of like this: your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. Everyone know that song? Okay. And it definitely described my mama and my daddy. They didn't dance or rock and roll very much at all, especially my dad. And it allowed me at that prime age to be able to kind of distance myself and say I'm different from them, which is what you're supposed to do at that age, right? But it gave me a voice in that, and I bought albums from Loggins and Messina, who sang the song, and from them individually for years afterwards, and I thought that I was the first one to be able to discover either one of them. They had no life before I discovered them, which of course is not true, and one of the neat things about Jimmy Messina is that he had a great musical life before that. He sang in a group named Buffalo Springfield. Yeah. And Buffalo Springfield gave us one of the amazing songs. It came at an amazing time of life. It was written and published in 1967, right in the midst of quite a bit of upheaval and challenge and change in this world. And it said this. The name of the song was For What It's Worth. There's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street singing songs and carrying signs mostly say, hooray for our side. Paranoia strikes deep into your life. It will creep. And the chorus said this: it's time to stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look, what's going down? In the midst of revolution, it's sometimes hard to stop, isn't it? Because it just fills your head full of things. And a good friend of mine, Stephen was his name, he was a singer and a pastor. Stephen once asked this question. He said, I wonder what we thought we were revolting against. Or were we just revolting? Sometimes it's hard to tell, isn't it? Because in the midst of all that stuff that draws us every which direction, it's hard not to be the ones that are carrying signs that mostly say hooray for our side. Right? In the midst of all that, it's definitely difficult to not be partisan and be against each other. We set ourselves easily into those conflictual relationships, that competition. And the 1960s, with all that happened there, all the amazing things that happened during that time, all the ways that it changed this world, set us in a space that we're still trying to understand, right? The questions that the 60s raised are still affecting us 50 years later. Because we're still trying, we saw that what was behind us wasn't quite right, but we didn't know quite what to do to move towards the future, and we're still trying to figure out what that is. And sometimes people are still holding on, other people are still moving forward, and we're often in conflict with each other, aren't we? Much of what we're dealing with today derives directly from that conflict that continues. And it's difficult to listen to the wisdom in a song like this that tells us to stop, look around, hear, and listen. Because in that moment that I feel like I'm against you, I just want to win. In that moment that I think that I have the right answer and you don't, I just want to beat you with my right answer. way too easily. And that's true about those big moments, and they're true about small moments as well. Too often I'm just carrying my sign saying, hooray for my side. And that sign often becomes the weapon that I use to beat you. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the Celestine prophecy, and we've done a great job looking at how Redfield draws us forward and draws us towards more. We talked about coincidences and how they're showing how God is present and helping us to see something, and that we're looking at energy between us and around us, that it draws us into something more. And we looked at that longer now, and how the mystics help us to see a bigger picture than just I would see by myself. And so we've been growing, we've been learning, we've been saying, oh my gosh, look how God is present. And then we get to the day. And Redfield pauses in his narrative to be able to give us the caution of what happens with all of that energy. And how it gets in our way, not because it's bad, but because how we use it is bad. It's how we look at each other, and essentially in the interaction of who we are, we begin to fight over that energy. In the story, our protagonist sees a man who is a scientist, and he says this: "My field is conflict, looking at why humans treat each other so violently. We've always known that this violence comes from the urge humans feel to control and dominate one another, but only recently have we studied this phenomenon from the inside, from the point of view of the individual's consciousness. We have asked what happens inside a human being that makes him or her want to control someone else. We have found that when an individual walks up to another person and engages in a conversation, which happens billions of times each day in the world, one of two things can happen. That individual can come away feeling strong or feeling weak, depending on what occurs in the interaction. For this reason, we humans always seem to take a manipulative posture. No matter the particulars of the situation or the subject matter, we prepare ourselves to say whatever we must in order to prevail in the conversation. Each of us seeks to find some way to control and thus to remain on top in the encounter. If we are successful, if our viewpoint prevails, then rather than feel weak, we receive a psychological boost." How many have seen that dynamic in someone else around you? Definitely not in yourself, right? It's a pretty typical dynamic. We sit in that space, that conversational space, and suddenly we're fighting with each other over that energy. We're trying to make sure that our way gets heard and accepted, or at least prevail. And when we do that, we fight over the scraps of energy that lie between us, and we steal that energy from each other. Because when I dominate you in that conversation, when my way prevails, I steal your energy way too easily. And Redfield tells the story of this family that was serving them dinner, and there was a set of parents and the daughter. And the parents were dominating sorts, intimidators, he called them, and the daughter was that person who was the poor me. And she was ready to explode. Because her control drama said that that's how she got energy, but the parents were so dominating that she wasn't getting energy any longer, so she was having to say, what do I do to be able to reverse this flow? How do I make it so they don't keep stealing from me? And all of us learn things like that. We learn primarily from our family of origin ways of being able to steal energy back, to get the flow coming this way rather than that way. And it's not because we're horrible or bad that it happens. In fact, all of us do this naturally, and it arrives out of very logical reasons. Our parents acted in a certain way. We learned certain ways of being, and we begin to act according to that. And we carry that forward into this moment, whether or not it's completely applicable like it was in the past. We learn how to be that way. And our hero in this story, his parents presented him with this issue. Dad wanted to enjoy life, live life to the fullest. Mom was a religious person and had these answers that she thought were good, and so they were both what we call interrogators. They would ask him and they would say, hey, is my way okay? They wouldn't quite do it that way, but essentially that was the question. Do you like my way better than his way? Do you like my way better than her way? And they were continually asking him to take their side, thus being able to have the energy flow that way. And so his reaction, in order to not stand in between those two, in order to not fix that, is he became aloof. And sat back and said, oh, I'm not really supporting either one. And in that aloofness, he attracted them to continue to ask, and thus the energy flow began to go this way into him. It was his way of being able to make sense of the situation and to be able to derive the thing that he needed out of it. And all of us do that same type of thing. And we might be the aloof person. We might be the interrogator. We might be the intimidator. We might be the poor me person. Or we might be any combination of that or a lot of other things. But somehow we learned from that family of origin, from those parents of ours, how to receive energy, how to manipulate enough to be able to feel better about ourselves in the interactions of life. But see, we're fighting over relatively small scraps of energy. In my own case, my dad grew up in a small town up in northern Arizona, Eager, a ranching family. And he had bigger plans than that small world. He had to be more than that, and especially when it came to folks like his older brother, Bob. Because Bob was one who never had dreams beyond that space, never left Eager. There he sat his whole life, and from my dad's point of view, became stuck and small. My dad had bigger plans, and off he went to the U of A and then BYU and University of Wisconsin, getting a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, and became an eminent person in his field, which was very similar to what he'd grown up with, cattle. And he made some wonderful strides in beef cattle research in order to make it so we have more meat coming out and to us through less work and less problems with that meat. So he did wonderful and amazing things. And then when he, outside of that, grew in the church that he was a part of, the LDS church, he became my bishop, which made it a little hard for me to go into those interviews, during your teenage years and be honest. Just saying. But he was busy, and all of that drove him, all of that success and all of that he was. And partially through that education, he met my mom, and my mom was a wonderfully bright and glowing star, and then she got married, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because she was always wonderful as a mother, but her world became us. There were 9 of us. She needed to have a lot of energy that way, right? And so what could have been of her world became this of her world, us. And she gave us so much, and I really don't mean to downplay that, but we became her whole world in many ways. And I was 5th out of 9, and I kind of sat in the middle of these 2 great dramas, and all the other kids around me, and I became this that said, I can rebel. I don't want to be the small world of my mom. I don't want to be this that only goes like this and runs away from things. And I could have, the control drama could have stuck me in that small scene of just rebelling all the time. Which I do too much anyway. Because I become against this, that, or that. But what they really taught me was more than that. For you see, we can get caught in that small scene, that small drama, and replay it, and replay it, and replay it. And we can go back to that same thing and only be this much. That it's enough, this little bit of energy that I can draw from you because I play my drama well and it works on you, and so you give me a little bit of energy. Or we can choose a larger drama. The majority of people who leave Mormonism, for example, lose church completely. The vast majority, 90%. Right? My mom and dad, in who they were, taught me to step beyond who they were. That small world my mom had also taught me to choose a bigger world. And this was enough for her, and this fulfilled everything that she was, but she allowed me to be able to see that something more was possible. That drivenness of my father, though, taught me to step backwards and not drive only. That wasn't enough. And it allowed me to take steps beyond what they would have ever taken, and I stepped away from who they were and into a larger world. And I haven't escaped the control drama completely. None of us ever do. But the idea is, can you be aware of your control drama? Can you look at it and see it for what it really is? And you have to go back into all that happened in your past. You have to be honest about it, and not just honest to yourself, but you need to speak it and say, this is what happened. This is who they were. This is what they gave to me. And you have to look at those parents and decide what is the message that they spoke into life. And then you have to say, what is my evolutionary step? Not what does it tell me I ought to be, the drama. But what is the step I can take to transcend it? To go beyond it? And sometimes it means that you take a step outside of what they would have ever wanted. My mom and dad never hoped for me to be a pastor. But who they were allowed me to take that step. And see, each of us have to figure out how to hear the evolutionary voice that tells us what we can be, not just merely what we have been. Not who they are and who they taught me to be, but who their real life showed me is possible. And I have to be able to find the way to step beyond who they are and into the future. Once we understand the struggle that goes on, that controlling struggle that makes it so that we're searching for those tidbits of energy, once we get beyond that, we immediately begin to transcend this conflict. That's our job, is to draw not from each other only, but from a larger source that flows through all this. For if I'm just trying to steal your energy, it will deplete. If you're still just trying to steal mine, it will deplete. But if both of us are somehow living in a space where neither one of us is depending just on this energy in me or in you, if we're depending on the larger energy around us to flow in and through us, then it will be unlimited. You see, the control dramas work on a story of scarcity, that there's only so much. And it seems true. There's only so much corn. Well, no, corn you can argue that. There's a billion, a lot of corn. But things like gas will run out, and so prices have to go up if it's scarce. So we we look at each other and we think there's only a certain amount of love, a certain amount of hope, a certain amount of peace, and so we have to fight over those scarce commodities. But in God's world, it's not that way. In God's world, there's abundance. There's more than enough for all of us to have every bit of what we need. And so I fight to steal these little bits of love, a little bit of joy, when God is trying to say, no, I want you to have it all. I want you to have the whole thing. And so we have to see each other. We have to react to each other. We have to interact with each other in a way that allows that abundance to flow between us. So instead of depleting each other in those interactions, we fill each other up and continue filling each other up. My parents believed that God was still speaking. I heard that voice to mean be a Methodist. Well, not quite be a Methodist, but move beyond Mormons. Your parents spoke a message into your life that's important for you to hear so that you can take it the next step forward. How is it that your parents' lives spoke to you, even if they don't like the answer that you hear in that? How is it that your life can take you somewhere beyond what they would have ever dreamt of? And how is it that you're speaking a message to your kids so that they can take it the next step? And maybe you don't understand what it is that they're doing. Maybe you even disagree with how they take it, but you should celebrate that they are hearing Spirit and that they are taking it evolutionarily to somewhere new. 1 Corinthians is an interesting book because it's a book about conflict. Because this church in Corinth was a church that was fighting with each other about who had the best gifts. I show it through this gift, and so I'm the better. Paul is trying to say, no, it's not that. That's not what it's about. And this passage is key to understanding the whole thing. See what it said? There are a variety of gifts, but they all come from the same God. A variety of services, a variety of activities, but the same Spirit activates them all. And the problem is that we want to think our gift, our way of seeing, our way of being is better than everybody else's. And so we try to make our way speak louder. Instead, we should be celebrating that Spirit is moving, sometimes in unintelligible ways from our perspective. But that Spirit is speaking in every single person. And when we begin to realize that and celebrate that and encourage that and let that speaking happen again and again, suddenly we begin to become the people of God in true sense. And we sing the truth, a truth that smacks of namaste, that idea that each one of us has God living with us. I see the light of God in you. The shining light of love comes through. And I am blessed to be with you. Oh, heavenly child of God. I see the light of God in you. The shining light of love comes through. And I am blessed to be with you, O heavenly child of God. I see the light of God in you, the shining light of love comes through, and I am blessed to be with you, O heavenly child. Sung it enough times, look at somebody and speak the words to them. Let's sing it again. I see the light of God in you, the shining light of love comes through, and I am blessed to each other's hearts and looking into each other's lives and sing this song, not just here in this space, but when you go out there as well. And you get into those places where somebody's in front of you in line and you're just or that space where someone is trying to control you to get your energy. Sing this song to them, not with your lips, but with your heart and with your life. And sing so that they find a greater source of life than just you, a greater source of love than just you. Sing so that energy flows not from you, but through you. And sing, I see the light of God in you. Sing it again and again, so that this world evolves and becomes more of what God wants. Amen? Amen. Let's stand and sing together.